I avoided Days Gone originally when it launched due to the general feeling of mediocrity that the game seemed to receive initially when it launched in April of last year. Just another open world game, just another zombie game, just another survival game. These were the impressions that I had based off reviews, titles of articles, and the general consensus of kind of the public on Twitter and the likes. And while to a certain degree these summaries are technically true and accurate, after biting the bullet when the game went on sale at the end of last year and delving into Days Gone 10 months down the line, I can safely say that this game is actually absolutely worth your time. Days Gone is a great video game that was massively overlooked last year, and in this video I'm going to explain why. Please be advised that there are some mild spoilers ahead in order for me to make my points properly, but nothing that would absolutely ruin the game for you and stop you from picking it up and playing it, which is actually what I'm advocating for. I do recommend that you do play this game. So yeah, spoilers suck. I'm not going to ruin anything massive, but do be warned that there may be some mild spoilers ahead. Firstly, let's actually look at why I think the game was received poorly and did leave people feeling confused as to whether or not the game was actually good or not. I'm going to be clear, Days Gone is not a perfect game. It's not the best game on PlayStation, but it's a great game with flaws. Should these flaws stop you from purchasing the game? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Days Gone's biggest weak point, which I do believe is the main problem that instills an unfair sense of mediocrity to the game's quality, is the structure. It's amazing how important structure is when creating anything, whether it be a novel, film, TV show, or a game. You can have the best characters, the best dialogue, the best action, but when it's tied together poorly, it can leave the audience feeling disconnected from the overall feeling that the individual events were supposed to make you feel as a whole. And Days Gone definitely suffers from this. And again, without going into spoilers, I want to explain what I mean. Through both the marketing and the initial setup for the game when you start playing, it leads you to believe that your main goal as protagonist Deacon St. John is essentially to complete random fetch quests for 2 encampments across a medium-ish sized map. Your best friend Boozer is there with you, but he's injured in the very first scene and spends the first 10 hours or so of the game basically as a bedridden arsehole, complaining over the radio to you whilst you do menial tasks for the 2 camps. You're introduced to the world and you get a flashback here and there to life before the outbreak, but that's about it. Deacon is your average hard man with a heart just trying to get by. He's a conflicted character who's pretty brutal and pretty hardcore, but at the same time is also a really nice guy. And this doesn't really change, and it goes on for quite a while, to the point where I figured that this was just the entire game. Again, as it fits with what we were shown in the promotional material. There's no setup for the main objective of the game or what Deacon's overall motive is. In most games, your character's primary goal is set up very early on. In God of War, you have to reach the mountaintop to scatter your wife's ashes. That's it. In The Last of Us, you have to escort Ellie to a place where she can be tested for a cure. Once you're given that main objective, it doesn't matter when you stray here and there from the path, on side missions or additional objectives, you still know that this is all in aid of completing the main goal. In Days Gone though, it takes an extremely long time to even begin to establish what Deacon's main goal is. Yes, okay, it's obvious he's looking for his wife. Yeah, that's the main goal in a sense, but it's constantly played off as such a, it doesn't really matter if she's alive or she isn't. You don't really care because Deacon doesn't really seem to mind. You kind of get the sense that if she is or isn't, it doesn't make a difference to Deacon, and it's hard to really kind of understand what his main character's objective is. And this is something that's hard to really explain in detail until you play the game and understand how the story unfolds. But that's my kind of point on that for now without going any more into that side of it. So you're just aimlessly barreling through missions until suddenly, 10 hours or so in, you move into a new part of the world and actually find the main focus for Deacon, the Lost Lake Camp. An encampment filled with incredible characters and set in a much more, I think, engaging and interesting area of the map than the starting bit. With political arguments about borders, internal debates about chains of command, double crosses, relationships, heartbreak, incredible world building, and character moments. This is where the game actually becomes the game I think it was supposed to be. Deacon trying to earn his place amongst a group of people that don't really trust him, but also rely on his abilities out in the world to keep them safe. It just takes so damn long to get to this point. And Boozer actually becomes a real character, and there's a genuine connection between Deacon and him that really gets quite emotional at points, and I laughed, I smiled, and was almost brought to tears in some places, and just generally just invested fully in their and other characters' relationships. Once the writing gets going, It's honestly up there with some of the best acting and writing in any video game that I've played.
How's it going, old buddy?
Boozer, where are you going?
Home. That's where I'm going, home.
Well, we can't go back to O'Leary Mountain.
No, I'm not going to fucking O'Leary Mountain. I'm going to Farewell.
Shit, come on. We gotta get...
You don't want to be doing that.
You want to take a swing at me? Fine. Get in line behind them. Ring it! So this is it? This is how we're going out?
Get out of here, brother.
No, I don't think so.
You told me that if I was going to drink myself to death, you'd be right there with me. That's what brothers do.
So like I said, Boozer, is this it? This is how we're going out?
However, the next strange thing related to structure starts to come in. There are mild spoilers here again, but once you kind of get to the climax of Lost Lake's story, it involves you having to ride south and abandoning all of the hard work that you put into fighting the Rippers, who are a kind of primary human enemy in this world.
What the fuck?
Cutting themselves. Had a guy who went to one of the rituals or whatever the fuck. He said that the Rippers are jacked up on some PCP or something. They don't feel the pain.
Well, let's go around.
That's what I was thinking.
And completing the main goal of keeping Lost Lake safe from their threat. It turns out that there's an entire other massive area of the map with new encampments, characters, storylines, enemies, all waiting to be discovered. And whilst all of this turned out to be amazingly well written and very exciting too, it's just the timing of the introduction to this part of the game that feels odd. It almost feels like you're playing a DLC, or like they forgot that they were supposed to get to this part in the game and they were like, oh crap, it would be really cool if we did this with the game too. So they just chuck it in at the end without any real natural blend between Act 2 and Act 3 to connect them together. So to put it this way, I thought the end of Act 1 could have been the end of the game. It could have been everything ties up nicely, but then you go into Act 2. Oh, there's more to the game. Act 2 concludes and oh, wow, that was a great ending to the game. Cool, all right. And it just keeps going despite seemingly reaching natural conclusions time and time again. And of course, I'm always happy for more content. And the fact that there's easily 30 hours of pure story content in this game outside of the additional tens of hours exploring the world and defeating all the hordes and marauders. It's an incredible package for a single player game. No microtransactions, you can't knock it. But it's just odd that Days Gone kept making me think the story had ended before it actually did. I kept preparing myself to be like, cool, that was the end of that. Now I'm gonna go off and do the side missions and kill the hordes. But it doesn't, there's more story. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but when it leads you to natural conclusions and then carries them on, it was hard to really get an emotional sense of satisfaction because there was no end goal, so I didn't know when there was going to be an ending. In other games, for example, like The Last of Us, you can kind of tell when the end of the story is coming. Red Dead Redemption, you can tell when the big climax is coming, and you know that when you're moving from camp to camp, these aren't the ends of the game. Whereas in Days Gone, you have no idea. The game could have ended at multiple points and there would be no loose ends. And all of this isn't helped by Days Gone's main technical flaw, loading screens and loading times. Every single cutscene is prefaced with a fade to black, a loading symbol, and then a fade in on the cutscene. The cutscenes all transition back to gameplay in the same manner. This is a big blow to maintaining a sense of flow in the story, especially when you're mid-mission and something dramatic happens, and instead of just seamlessly going from a pre-made animation and cutscene to handing the controls back to you, everything just stops and you have to wait 5 seconds and the music stops and then you're shown the cutscene and then everything stops again and then you have to wait and then you go back into the action. This is obviously an unavoidable result of the game engine used by Ben Studio. Of course, Ben Studio would ideally not want to have this in their game. Like, loading screens are not ideal, and I don't imagine they're like, hey guys, let's put a loading screen here. Like, of course. But it still doesn't negate the fact that this exists and that the flow is consistently interrupted, just further adding to the feeling that this story is disjointed in more ways than one. And I hope by the time that we get to PS5 and next gen that loading screens like this will truly be a thing of the past. But for now, I'm not digging into Ben for this at all, but it's just simply an unfortunate negative that exists within this game at the current moment in time. Not to keep knocking the game, but I do feel like it's important to address these key flaws with the game, because if these are things that bug you, of course they're going to bug you. And I think it's important that you know this about the game before going into it, and I do think that these are the main reasons why people found some issues with it at launch. So the final odd and frustrating design choice that I'm going to talk about here is that of missions only triggering once you've left the camp that they're available to collect in. So what do I mean by that? Well, for example, you've just handed in a mission to Ricky Patel, a really cool and interesting side character in the game. You've handed the mission in and you want to crack on with the next mission immediately. But to do so, you have to run or drive to the camp entrance, step outside, then receive a radio call immediately from Ricky saying that she needs to talk to you about the next mission. So you have to run or drive back in and speak to her again. Essentially, triggering the next mission only happens once you leave the camp. And once you realize this, it makes the flow of missions really annoying, especially if your aim is to push through story missions. At first, it seems kind of natural because you hand in a mission, you go out into the world, you're looking to explore, you get a call on the radio. Cool, I'll go back and see what's happening in the camp next time I go. But when your aim is to just barrel through the story and you have to kind of do the mission and you're like, right, literally 1 foot out the gate and then back in, it gets a bit frustrating. Lots and lots of back and forth. Once I even left the gate and ran back so quickly while Ricky had just got on the radio to me, and she was talking about how she hadn't seen me in ages, despite the fact that I was standing right in front of her like 20 seconds ago. It's a relative nitpick, I know, but it's something that does add up over time and is an element of game design that we do need to move past at this point, at this era in gaming. And is a lesson that I hope Bend Studios learn when making their next title. So it's for these reasons that structurally the narrative of the game hinders in places the genuinely incredible writing and characters that Bend Studio created, as each great section feels so disconnected from the previous that you feel like you're not quite sure what the main focus of the game is. Is it finding your wife Sarah? Is it solving the mystery of the Freaker outbreak, which by the way has some amazing lore behind it? Is it surviving with Boozer and just trying to find your place in the world? Is it earning your place at Lost Lake? Is it defeating the Rippers? It's kind of all of those at the same time, but not at the same time altogether, is my best way of summarizing it. It's very strange. And this is why I think the overall game was received poorly at launch. And lots of people had lots of ideas about what the game should have been and were confused because the game presents so many ideas and storylines to you. Now that the game is settled, however, and I went into it without any real preconception as to what it should be, I kind of forgot what any of the premises were for it. I did actually just enjoy the game for what it was, a beautiful and this is the best looking game on PS4 by a mile, easily. I mean, until The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima come out. But for now, it's mind blowing how beautiful it looks. It's kick-ass, open world, third person zombie shooter game. That's what it is. It is that at its core. And if you're after something like that, you're gonna get it with this game. Bend absolutely nailed the open world aspect of Days Gone. Whilst a lot of open world games tend to be copy and paste environments with a few key bespoke buildings here and there, I kid you not, every single building, road, train line, settlement, camp, everything is uniquely designed. There's visual storytelling in every inch of this world, from trucks that are overturned with bloody hand marks and trails leading away, to suggest a horde of freakers escape from inside or feed here at nighttime, to every camp having bespoke signs and layouts, to buildings filled with overturned tables and rotting bodies detailing a last stand, to freaker nests with bits of wood and branches leading you to actually physically discover where the nests are. They're not just randomly placed, there is an actual sense of this is where the freakers drag all of their resources to actually build their nests, and you can follow it very naturally to find it. Every single building is worth exploring for that reason alone, which is a fantastic trait to have in an open world, and I think every open world game can definitely learn from Days Gone in this regard. Hats off to the world design team here. This is absolutely top quality stuff. Now this is what you're all here for if you're playing this game, the hordes. And the hordes are equally terrifying to run from early on when you aren't powerful enough to take them on, with around 300 freakers in some of the biggest hordes, as they are thrilling to fight as you become better equipped and better skilled further into the game. Planning your movement to stay one step ahead of them, laying down traps and stocking up on ammo is all part of the prep. And then comes the moment of no return as you fire the first bullet at them, leading to a heart racing, sometimes 10 to 15 minutes of action and fear as you juggle running around and climbing with making every shot count and trying to pick up resources as you go to rebuild ammunition and supplies. Some of the most thrilling moments in any game from 2019 for sure. And take this moment, for example, where I tried silently headshotting a few stragglers heading back to a cave for the horde. I didn't really want to take them on, but I was just like, no, I'll try and take a few out, see how far I can get. It's quite thrilling actually, trying to see how many you can take out silently without calling the whole horde down on you. But my last bullet, I didn't realize, broke the silencer on the very last bullet in the clip, and it just went bang. And there was just a moment of like, I realized as I sat there, oh my God, they're all gonna come out after me, and the entire horde then just overflows out of the cave and chase me down the hill. It's just an incredible gaming moment. The world is stunning, especially when playing at 4K and with HDR enabled on a PS4 Pro. Every texture is beautifully detailed, the weather effects are mind-blowing, and the motion capture is easily some of the best I've seen in any game. The sheer amount of nuance and heart in every line of dialogue that Sam Witwer delivers as Deacon is worthy of one of the best performances of, I'm going to say it, of the generation. And Nathan Whitehead's score is also a perfect accompaniment to the setting and story moments. I mean, look at these damn textures and the puddles, oh my God. Now, I'm not big on scoring games on like a 1 out of 10 basis. However, to help summarize how I feel about Days Gone, I do think that using a scoring system will help me to represent how I feel in the most effective way. So, I would say that the second half of the game, once you've unlocked more of the abilities, met the majority of the entertaining and primary characters, and explored the better and more interesting parts of the world, as well as fighting more challenging enemies and draw towards the more engaging parts of the story, Days Gone is easily a 9 out of 10, and in some ways a 10 out of 10 in some regards. After originally starting off at what I thought was like just a 5 or 6 out of 10, nothing bad, but nothing great, which makes it hard to really place the overall feeling for the game. Days Gone just takes so long to actually figure out what it wants to do and where it wants to take you, that by the time a lot of people get to that part of the game, they will most likely have already formed a mildly lowered and negative impression of the game as a whole. I guess my point is, if you are willing to stick out for the first 10 hours or so, you will discover the gem that is Days Gone. The world building and lore is set up so cleverly and interestingly that I really would love to see a sequel on next gen, and it would absolutely be a day one purchase for me. Considering how far Ben pushed the PS4 on a graphical level, as well as the sheer amount of enemies on screen at the same time, I can only imagine what they could do with the power of the PS5. There's lots of lore built up talking about how the hordes are moving from North LA up towards Oregon. I'm just imagining a sequel where Deacon heads south to the denser towns and cities of Sacramento or San Francisco, with potentially thousands of freakers on screen at a time. Oh, that would just be insane, and it'd be amazing to see them pull something like that off. So, Days Gone, absolutely worth a purchase, especially if you can get it on sale. Does it have its flaws? Definitely, which is why it sets it apart from the more iconic games of this generation. But the overall experience is so great that by the end, it's worth getting through them to experience the game. And considering that this was Ben's first true open world experience, they did an excellent job. They might not have nailed it in every avenue like how Guerrilla did with Horizon Zero Dawn, but they did a damn good job, and as I say, have set themselves up incredibly well for the future. Days Gone stumbles here and there as it tries to find its footing, but once it does, it takes massive strides in achieving some excellent gameplay moments, incredible world building, heartfelt story moments, and intense action. If you wipe this game off your radar, I would genuinely and highly recommend giving it the chance that it deserves. And that's it for today's video. As always, please give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and do subscribe to join me on this journey if you haven't done so already. And with that, I'll see you all in the next video.